Welcome to PodRocket. I'm Kate, the producer and one of the hosts of PodRocket. With me today is Rosie Sherry. Hi, Rosie. How are you doing?
Hey, Kate. Thanks. I'm good. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming on. Rosie is currently the community lead at Orbit. Rosie, tell us a little about yourself and what you're working on.
Yeah. How much do you want to know? How far do I go back? Um, but yeah, I guess to summarize me is I often I say I am community. Everything I do is community. I think about community by day. I think about it by night. I work in community. I work for a startup that builds community products, or a product, I guess. Um, I write about community by night at Rosieland. I've been building communities, I guess, about 15 years now.
Yeah, it's
Um,
amazing.
so yeah, I mean, I love community. I think when I first discovered community, I kind of knew that was me.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so awesome. And so it started with Ministry of Testing, and that started 2007, I believe.
Yep. Yeah.
And I mean, I just like thinking about it. I'm on the marketing team at LogRocket, and I think we talk about community a lot. We don't think about it maybe as a lot of other companies think about it, but I'm just curious, like what was community building like, kind of going like that far back, and now how has it kind of changed? Maybe even with like the pandemic, going from an online community to then events, then to back online. I'm kind of curious about the story of the Ministry of Testing.
Yeah. So 2007 kind of feels like yesterday, but it feels like so long ago as well. So I think time has this kind of capacity to do that. But yeah, I like to often I like to visualize as like, where was I in 2007, or what existed then. So 2007 was like the early days of Twitter, right? It was like that kind of time frame. And so if you think like, well, what existed then, it was like it was basically like the early days of a lot of the social tools that you kind of see out in the world. It was the early days of LinkedIn, early days of Twitter, early days of Facebook even. Um, I'm not even sure if I was on Facebook then, or if it was available. I was definitely like early adopter of all of those things. That as soon as they came out, I would kind of sign up to them and try to use them, explore them as much as possible. Um, but yeah, so thinking about it from that perspective is like there weren't as many tools out there. It wasn't as easy just to flip or put something together. Um, but for that situation, there were things coming out, and one of the things that did come out was a tool called Ning, which was basically a hosted forum, and that made it easy for me to kind of set up the I guess foundations of a community. Um, but even though that was like the homepage of the community, is like it kind of looked nice for the time in comparison to like what was available. It's kind of like VB Bulletin was like the most common forum tool out there, and it's those old school forums. That's kind of like what I was trying to avoid. That was like when people had forums or communities, is like it's just like thinking of like what all these old school forums looked like. It's like they're not nice, they're not exciting, they're not any of that, and I kind of wanted to avoid that. So like as the new tools were coming out, I was exploring them, and basically kind of looking for excuses to use them. Um, and I was a tester at the time. Um, I was a tester that had discovered community through going to meetups locally, stuff like that. I discovered Seth Godin. He was like a big like influence at the time. Um, and I was looking for an excuse to do community. There weren't like jobs out there that were in reach of me. So my solution was to build a community myself. So I did meetups, not for Ministry of Testing, but I did some a local Girl Geek dinner meetup. I ran that for a couple of years, um, and that was great. But basically, I was looking for any excuse to experiment and to try stuff out, and that's kind of like how Ministry of Testing started. So I knew a few people. A few people knew me. I hung out with testers online. There weren't very many testers, to be honest. As there were a few people blogging, not many on Twitter. There was probably, I think there was like a Google group, I think at the time, but it was a relatively small community, um, and I used Ning as a hosted platform to kind of experiment with ideas and to connect with people. I didn't think much of it, and it was really just like a side project thing. But like the whole reason I wanted to do it was because being a tester at the time, I was like, I was a tester, and I was going to like local web based community groups or conferences, and I was like, oh man, they're doing all this fun stuff. why, why can't testers be doing this kind of stuff as well? So basically, inspired by a lot of, I wouldn't call it the early web movement, but the web movement of that time, um, and thinking about how I could apply that to the world of testing. Um, so it was basically kind of, I think, like trying to be more creative and forward thinking in everything I was doing, because everything about the testing world was not that, and I was like, this industry needs us. So I feel like this is a way to go.
Totally. No, that's interesting. So, you kind of took the framework that was set up in other industries and brought it into, testing. Do you think it would have been, or maybe have you seen it be different with other companies, industries? Like the initial setup is different, or I guess how is it different across the different positions you've had?
How's the community different?
How is like the setup of
So
yeah.
to be honest, it's like that. I think like communities is like they're all individual. And I think this is like what I've come to realize only over time, and only like as my career has changed, and as like my career is now a lot to do with thinking about community. Um, and to be honest, I think like everyone just makes it up as they go along. Every community is different, but I think at the heart of like good communities are people like trying to do the right thing and trying to create change, and having the kind of right motivations to do that. Um, and I guess like also perhaps like having, I guess like the successful communities are the ones that have a goal or a vision to strive for the long term. So they always like have something to kind of encourage them to keep moving forward. Um, and I think that probably applies to much of the, especially Ministry of Testing, but generally speaking, is just like in community, you just need to keep going. You need to keep going. You need to keep creative. You need to keep thinking of new ideas. You need to keep thinking of ways to connect with people. You need to keep thinking, especially like as you turn it into a business, you need to find ways to make it sustainable. And I think that that's probably like been the hardest like part for communities in general. Is like everyone wants to make them sustainable, but very few people actually have done that, and it's kind of sad, but it's also understandable, because I think to make a community successful, you have to like do the things that don't make sense and trust that it will work out. And a lot of businesses don't get that, or are not willing to invest into into that with that kind of mindset, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's another question I had. I guess kind of building out a strategy around a community. I think that's a really big holdup for companies, is just how do you build out something when it's a lot of different people, and like your community has stake in how you move forward, and so you have to be very flexible. I think that can be a big barrier. So how do you kind of handle that? Maybe as like a brand, how do you go from there?
Yeah, I think it's I think one of the challenges is like being scared to do things. I've often felt scared as like making decisions to say, oh, what if the decision I make impacts certain people in certain ways? What if they're unhappy? What if they kick up a fuss and march out? And it's like all
Right.
those kind of things like way on the back of your mind is like, how can you keep everyone happy? Um, and I think also, again, there's a lot of hindsight from this, but I think, you know, often we think about say, well, what does a community think? But I think also at the heart of communities are the people that are leading the communities, whether it's an individual, whether it's a company, whether it's a group of people, right? And communities have to serve them. They have to protect them as much as the rest of the community as well. So, like, if it doesn't work for the founders, that's going to be a huge problem going forward for the community as a whole. Um, and it's tough to balance that. I think it's tough, and I've certainly kind of had challenges over the years with that. But um, and I think it's tough as well when like you're building community, and like when you start community, you don't necessarily know where it's going to head or where it's going to be in the future. Like I started a ministry of testing without any intentions of turning it into a business. It was really just like this fun side project. I was looking for excuses, right? I was looking for, something for my CV. It's like, look, I built a community. Maybe I can get a job doing this one day, or maybe it will lead somewhere else. But for me, it got to a point where after 3 years, I was like, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore for free. It's a lot of time. It cost me money, some money. I'm not really making any money from it, and um, if I don't do something about it, this is potentially like the most important time in my career, perhaps, that I'm missing out on. Um, so it took me like 3 years to decide to turn it into a business. And I guess like that's challenging as well, because it's like, well, how do you turn it into a business after like being like essentially free for everyone? It's like, what are the things that you can do? Um, and we ended up going for conferences. We did like started doing conferences, and that became our main income. Um, and yeah, I guess like the thing behind that is like conferences, like I guess like in the startup world or the business world, they'll say, oh, do your research, ask your people what they want, get feedback and all of that kind of stuff. But I think when you build community, and like if you spent that time in community, like I had spent like those 3 years building that community, um, I didn't ask people, or I asked a couple of people or a few people whether they would attend a conference and pay for it, and they all basically said no. Um, but I was like, what? What are you on about? I was like, the industry needs this. Can't you see that? And they were like, no. And I was like, no, you guys are wrong. You're wrong. So I just went ahead anyways. Um, but I think that's the power of community as well. Is like, I don't think it's necessarily people, all coming in and voting on an idea. It's like it's people spending time, and when you spend time together, you create understanding, you create research, you get to know um, the industry and the people so much better than anyone else would, and that kind of empowers you as a founder potentially, or whoever's running it, to make decisions. And so like my decision was like, well, this needs to make money, and I think conferences will work. So let's give that a shot. Um, and I had tried other things before. I tried like a newspaper, an actual physical newspaper, and it made some money, not really profitable, but it like covered its costs. Um, but like I think we did it for like 2 years, it was so much fun. So much fun. Like the physical aspect is like I've got like really fond memories of that. But it's just like as a model, it just wasn't sustainable. And I wasn't really willing to like keep doing that because it just like sucked the life out of me. But that led on to the conference, right? So um like our first conference, like we gave out the newspapers, so it was like this like swag item that, but it was like really meaningful. It was like people at the conference were in the newspaper, and like you could take pictures of them like reading the newspapers and stuff like that. Um, so I believe like everything's essentially interconnected, and one thing leads to another. And these days, I would call it like experimenting, or creating like an MVC, like minimum viable community, is like just like you do that with a product, as in minimum viable product. Is like in community, we need to be willing to experiment with ideas and try things out and see what happens, see where they lead, and um, kind of build upon the lessons we learn or the things that we build.
So how did you like create buzz for, the newspaper or events? I think, my personal biggest fear is that I'll like create an event and no one shows up, or something like that. Like, how do you kind of create buzz and then from there create traction?
Yeah, it's funny because it's like I'm my character is like just like such what's the right way of saying it? It's just like me doing events just seems like crazy for who I am, because it's like I'm really kind of introverted, I guess. I'm not one that likes to get up on stage. I don't, even though like online these days, I'm more out there doing stuff. But like in real life, it's just not me. But like I've ended up doing events. Um, and I guess maybe like from the meetup experience that I had before, like I guess that gave me some confidence that I could pull some events together. But I think like when you're doing paid events, it's almost a different ball game. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. Um, so yeah, I mean, how do you create buzz? I think like the great thing for me with Ministry of Testing was that I was creating an event for people that we knew online and that we had conversed or connected online for quite some time. So actually, like the first event we did, it was like 70 people, so it wasn't huge, um, and it was actually quite cheap. I think it was like £100. I think it was like £60 to £100 that I charged. Um, and I guess like the fact that we all kind of knew each other online, and lots of us knew each other for years online. So the idea of like people coming together for the first time and actually meeting for the first time really created this special kind of bond and excitement. Um, and then like connecting with things like the newspaper thing is like people would come and say all these like interconnected things that people would identify with, and people would like hold the newspaper and have pictures taken with the newspaper and the article that they had written. Um, and it just like brought people together, and it kind of brought people together in a meaningful way. um I guess like I've done. I guess like as a community builder, we tend to do marketing things, but with the I is like we're not marketeers, but we do have to, at least sometimes, like in the case of like a conference, we do have to sell tickets. So it's like how do you like sell tickets without being pushy? And how do you keep the calm, right? When you want more people to be buying tickets, and they're not buying, or you panic that not enough people are going to show up. Um, so yeah, and good answers for that. I think is just um, to build traction is like to build on the things that generate excitement, and to reflect that back to the community, and for the community to share that as much as possible. So if they're having a good time, they'll go and tell their friends about it. And If they're having a good time, we can take pictures of them having a good time, or we can record the talks. We recorded all the talks from day one, and we shared them with the community. So I always use that as I spent a bit extra on getting the videos done because I knew that it would be beneficial longer term to actually show like what the conferences were like. And I think that as a basic foundation, that's kind of worked over time. I've never kind of invested in marketing per se. Like we've had an email list for years. It was just me kind of doing it, sending out emails. Um, I I ran a weekly newsletter from pretty early on. Probably it wasn't when I first started, but probably within the year or so after, I realized actually I need a way to continually tap into the community, to make sure that yes, we exist all year round, but also we do this conference, and that weekly newsletter kind of helped promote the conference as well, in a way that wasn't pushy as well. Um, and like I guess like announcement like emails, for example, they would be few and far between. So like we would announce a conference, and then um, that we would literally just send out one email, and then send out maybe one reminder like a month before. But I was really keen not to kind of be pushy. It wasn't my style. Um, but yeah, it could get nerve wracking at times. I think like what I discovered over time is actually like the people who pay for the conferences are essentially companies. And companies need time to get, or employees need time to get approval, to get the budget to go. Um, and so in time, we kind of built up processes that allowed for them to kind of have that time to buy the tickets. Um, and yeah, it doesn't mean it's easy. Like sometimes we would launch like with early bird pricing, and people would go to their bosses for approval with early bird pricing, and it would take like 3 months to get approval.
Yeah.
And by that time, like the pricing had gone up.
Right.
So like challenges like that is like, I guess it's a good problem to have,
Yeah.
but those are the things that you kind of learn along the way.
Totally. Yeah. 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 Conference tickets. Yeah. It's a whole nother um, ball game for sure. I so I think with like I've was listening to some podcasts you were on earlier, and was looking at Rosie Land and your newsletter. I think you do a really good job of saying, be authentic in your communities, and your personal brand is so like, be authentic. I think, you share a lot about your experience with Ministry of Testing and kind of the challenges there. I think, from what I can see, your personal brand, it is then like a, kind of pillar of trust for the communities that you build. And I think did you like plan that, or is it just like that was organic? Cause I think, the people who attend these conferences, or, now webinars, or virtual stuff, it's like, oh, well, you know, we know Rosie, and has a long past with this. And she always talks about like, uh, being authentic. And so maybe, we're a little more keen to go to this one as opposed to maybe some other ones that we've heard of.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think for me, it's like I can only, I think, yeah, in time, I've realized that the best way to be is purely authentic, and the more authentic you can be, the better. I think earlier on, I probably didn't have as much confidence compared to now. Now I'm kind of just like, um, there's sod it. There's no other way. There's absolutely no other way. I have to be 100% me, and or nothing else. I just can't do it. And I think like life is too short to be anything else, to pretend to be anything else. Um, but it doesn't mean it's easy. So like early on in my career, I hid the fact that I had kids because The moment people find out you have kids, they don't want to employ you. Well, that's what it was like, 18 years ago. My eldest is 18. And so it's like those kind of things make you not want to be authentic. It makes you not want to share about who you are, right? But over time, I've kind of learned to embrace that and actually kind of, I guess, advocate um, for people like me who have lots of kids, and unschool their kids and create communities and bootstrap communities. It's like I'm just like an advocate for it all. It's just like yeah. I'm gonna talk about it. It's like this is possible, and I'm not gonna hide anything. And it's not necessarily easy, but this is me, and I believe it. If this is me and I'm happy being me, which I am, I think, um, then there's probably other people who might appreciate seeing that actually you can live life a bit differently. You can just like be yourself. You can grow into roles and love what you do. Um, and yeah, it's just like there's no other way basically. I get annoyed when people aren't authentic, and I can see right through it. Um, I don't know if I can see through it more than others. Um, I'm still trying to figure that one out. But sometimes I see things that I think other people don't see, and I'm like, you don't see like how they're not being authentic,
Mm.
and it's frustrating, because I guess it's like ethics as well. It's
Mm.
like I'm quite big on my ethics. I believe in doing the right thing, um, and I think it's served me well. It's if we put it into business terms, it's my marketing strategy.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like, as the wrong way to put it, because it's not my marketing strategy,
mm.
but it's helped me grow a business. It's helped me do things.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's
that
worked. Yeah.
it's worked, and people love it, right? For some one reason or another, people love it. So obviously, like, I think I'm doing something right,
Totally.
and I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, and that so I guess like what would be the reason um to not start a community? I guess, when should you not start one?
Um, I guess you shouldn't start one if it's for your own personal needs. I think
Hmm. Hmm.
you shouldn't start one if you don't truly want to help people.
Hmm.
You shouldn't start one if you're not going to share the rewards, if you're not willing to invest back or give back. Um, you shouldn't start one if you're not willing to do it for a long time. That's not strictly true, but I think if you want to build like a long term community, you have to be willing to kind of do it for 5 to 10 years at least, and stick through the times where you don't see growth. Um, and yeah, I guess like that's always the hardest one. I think is like sticking with it. Um, like I did ministry testing for 10 years before I stepped back,
Yeah.
for
Well.
example, and it's still going,
Yeah.
without me. Um, and yeah, people would like not understand me at the beginning, and they'd be like, "What? A community for testers?" I'm like, "Yeah, can't you see it?" They're like, "No." I'm like, "Okay."
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm curious. I know you're not involved in the day to day with Ministry of Testing now, but I am curious kind of how going from, I mean, Ministry of Testing did 1.5 million in revenue from with a lot of events. I'm curious how, COVID has not been kind to meetups nor events. So I'm just curious, kind of what the COVID Ministry of Testing has looked like.
Yeah, it's been tough. It's been super
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah.
Ministry of Testing, like I still own it, or I co-own it.
Hmm.
Um, so and I handed it over before COVID to a new CEO.
Hmm.
The CEO is one of the co-owners. I kind of see him as like a late founder.
Hmm.
So the deal was like, my husband was like the tech guy originally, who helped like with all the tech stuff and business stuff actually. Um, but the deal was basically like he would take it forward. It's like we've done. We wanted to move on, and I was kind of like a bit bored with testing. I guess I was like more interested in doing other things. Um, so yeah, he took it over. And he's been doing it for 4 years now. So like the pandemic has been 2 years. He took over 4 years over 4 years ago, and I spent a year just hanging around supporting him. But he was like the CEO, and then after a year, I took on a role at Indie Hackers, and that was my way of saying, actually, I'm just actually stepping back from everything. I needed to do something else so that I would stop sticking my nose
Yeah.
into it.
I imagine that was challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like on one hand, it's like me stopping sticking my nose into it, but it's like I spent a year supporting Richard, and that's what we agreed. We were both happy with that. It's like I didn't want it to be something that I just dropped and left with him, and doing like a gradual handover felt right to us, and I was happy to do it. Um, but yeah, like come pandemic, the business itself was 70% revenue from events. So it's like, yeah, it's like shit. uh, but yeah, basically. Uh, so yeah, like the first couple of months of the pandemic, it was like, oh my god, we weren't sure like what was going to happen. We had to cancel events. We had one literally in March, like at the end of March, and like everything shut down like 1 or 2 weeks beforehand. And we were like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening. Like, had the event like been 2 weeks prior, it would have gone ahead. I was like, oh my god, and that's like our biggest event as well. And so, and how do you deal with that? Like from an operations perspective, how do you inform people? What do you give? Do you give refunds? All those kind of things. It's like it's a nightmare to deal with. But then the nightmare to deal with ongoing is like we we employ 10 people. Are we going to be able to uh, keep them going? And those like within the first 3 months was like we were generally just like not sure what's going to happen. Um, to our advantage, strong community pulls you through. I think. To our advantage, we had already started and built a platform, membership platform with content and courses and stuff. We hadn't pushed it enough because we had been so busy with events. But that kind of like COVID kind of gave us a push to kind of make that the kind of core focus of prioritize. It's like this has got to be it. It's like let's make the membership the thing that sustains the community. So that's basically been the strategy out of that. Also, just I guess like thinking about like when you build community, it goes back to like, well, you want to give back to the community, you want to reward them. In my opinion, one way of rewarding them is not taking more money than you should. And we had savings in the bank. We had I believed in. I had business advice that not to have more than 3 months of savings in the bank account. That wasn't efficient. But I was like, no, I don't. That doesn't make me feel comfortable. I was like, I need at least 6 months, ideally a year's worth of money to keep, just to feel comfortable. Because I felt like if whatever happened, not that I saw COVID coming, but I felt really at ease knowing that there was money in the bank, knowing that I could turn away opportunities that I wasn't, that I didn't feel that were the best for the community. Um, and I think like being able to turn away things because they're not right for the community is a very powerful and strong position to be in. So I believed in having that safety net in the bank. And luckily that's what pulled it through partly. Another part is like we applied for a loan and had that as a safety net as well, which we never actually used. So that was more just like safety net kind of stuff. And we haven't yet had to dip into it, but we still have access to it just in case. Um, and then the other aspect of it was just going in on, well, how do we make it sustainable online with membership? Um, they've done membership, they've done some paid for events, um, and actually they've pushed a lot more for kind of marketing budget from typically like software companies, and that's been a huge increase as well. Um, so yeah, all in all, small losses for 2 years overall. Um, for a period of time, we all took a pay cut just to like save money, just in case, to give us the runway. Um, we took a pay cut. Me and my husband, we took a pay cut. We still haven't like increased our income from it that we take back to what it was pre-COVID. We'd prefer for it to just have the longevity than be too greedy. It's not the right time to for that. Um, but yeah, I think like tax year, end of March. I think this year will make a profit. So I think we'll. That's a great sign, and the goal is it's currently almost at 2,000 members, paid members,
Oh wow.
and the goal is to get, I think, to 3,000. Because if we have 3,000, then that basically covers all our costs.
Oh wow.
Um, so that's the goal at the moment. But we get extra money at the moment through kind of marketing and advertising budgets as well.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And with that, I guess, kind of, what are your thoughts on the future of communities? Going forward. I guess Ministry of Testing, Orbit. What do you think the future is?
I've been saying it for 15 years. I think the future of business, the future of the world is community, and I've felt that since I discovered community. I feel that even more now.
Mm.
Um, I think I think people still don't get it,
Mm.
and they won't get it until they experience it.
Mm.
So it's almost my mission to help people experience it, to help people build communities well, build communities authentically. And I don't think there's enough out there. I don't think there's enough that are sustainable. Um, and and yeah, so I guess like the future community, what is it? Is like it's going to exist everywhere. I think in some form or another. That is the future, and people are going to get results from it. But it's going to take. I think it will take a good 5 to 10 years to see real change.
Yeah. 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 And I guess, like, along those lines, what communities have you seen do really well? Like, what communities have you seen? Um, like, how do people build ones that are really great?
It's a tough question. I think these days communities exist in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, for example, you can have like communities of products, which are kind of associated to products like Figma, for example. I think they seem to do quite well with community. Notion does quite well with community. I think it's like, so that, there's definitely like big brands out there doing well when it comes to building a community around their product. So those examples are quite good. I think like when it comes, what I'd really love to see more of is like independent communities, as well. It's like this still feels like, whilst they're valuable, like having like community as a way of being, as part of a company, I still think there's a big need to create independent, sustainable communities. And that's what Ministry of Testing is. And I believe like we need more of that. We need more like communities that are striving for something without necessarily having this product to sell them at the end. But that, that doesn't mean that product communities aren't important either. They're just different, right? But I definitely feel like there's something special when the heart of the community is actually, as long as we improve our industry and find a way to make that sustainable, we're going to build the right kind of thing. But I think like, yeah, the challenge is getting people to change their mindsets to support them as well. So I think that's the challenge we have. And I guess like in my indie world, there's a few good examples of some like smaller indie type communities. Nest Labs springs to mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's run by Anne Laurie, and she started it during the pandemic just at the beginning. And I just like the way she builds community. It's authentic, it's accessible, it's affordable. Then there's like Intellect as well. They seem to be doing like really interesting things. And again, they're going for trying to find ways to be sustainable and staying true to like the things that they're trying to achieve. So
Mm-hmm.
they're driven for this need to connect and to share together. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, we are almost out of time. Is there anything you'd like to plug or have our listeners go check out?
Um, I guess everything Rosie and
Yeah.
Orbit, I guess. Rosie Sherry at Twitter. I tweet a lot. I tweet about community like every day, multiple times a day. Rosie.land is where I write about community stuff. And Orbit.love is where I work. Great company, doing good things. There's most places I would never consider working, but like Orbit is one of the few. So yeah, they're worth checking out.
For sure. Awesome. We'll include those links in our show notes. And Rosie, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, we'll see you around.
Excellent. Thank you.